conference today. What we're going to do is have first a series of questions that pertain to national security issues. And I'm going to call upon our Vice Chairman of the Garrett County Republican Central Committee, Ruth Humble, to present those questions. I think many of you in the audience know Ruth for so many years because of her dedicated service. So she's going to lead off the questioning now.
Thank you very much. Usually I don't need a microphone. I'm no Megan Kelly. I don't look like her, but I think my mind is just as sharp. And I wrote every one of these questions. Mr. Mason, most Americans want a bold national security. Actually, you addressed this in your introduction. Define briefly, in your opinion, a bold national security.
It's very simple. Just allow our troops to do what troops do. Untie their hands and allow the military to kill people, because that's what the military does. You've got to untie their hands and allow them to be the military, allow them to be troops. I was in the Marines. You know, it's not so much that we need a behemoth military force. We need to have a military force that's lean and mean and using technology. We have so much technology that the second nation in the world that matches our technology is woefully behind. So we don't have to worry too much about that. Just when we go to war like ISIS, let's destroy them with everything that we have. No mercy, because these people will never give us mercy. So it's very simple. You go to war, untie the hands, and destroy your enemy, and do it quickly and get out. No nation building, because that's exactly what our government also wants to do. Forever war, to put money in the pockets of the business owners that profit off of war. Get in, get out quick. And that's also Trump's stand, too, at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Huber, what is your solution to our main security issues, particularly ISIS terrorists and the Syrian refugee problem?
Okay, now this one. All right, thank you for the question. As do many of us, I have a website, and it's armyforcongress.com. I have an elaborate paper there on the issue of the Syrian immigrants, which I think is a major issue. They have a terrible plight. They obviously are being mishandled all over the world at this point. Actually, I believe that one of our security problems is dealing with Russia, because I think that Russia is actually bombing Syria in order to send the refugees to Europe in order to destabilize NATO. And I think NATO is one of our closest allies, and I think that's a very serious problem. Relative to the Syrian refugees and the United States, I absolutely stand with Hogan on not allowing any of them into Maryland unless they have been fully vetted. And in contrast to what John Delaney thinks, this is not a financial problem. His bill to throw money at that problem will not solve it. It's primarily a data problem. The data does not exist to vet these people, and the FBI has clearly indicated that we know of terrorists who have embedded themselves within the Syrian Syrian refugee cadres, and that's one of the reasons that they got into Europe as much as they had. The broader question on how to attack our national security problem is that first we need to have a president that stands by commitments. This is not the case today. Obama said he drew a red line with the use of chemicals in the Syrian conflict, and then when the Syrians used the chemicals, he did absolutely nothing. This caused us an immense amount of disrespect in the world, and we need to change our approach to maintain our commitments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ami. Mr. Painter, who do you consider, what countries do you consider our closest allies?
I think our closest allies are NATO, which Ms. Hover just referred to, South Korea, and probably a distant third, I'm going to say Japan. That's who I think are our best allies.
Is that all?
I think those are our most staunch allies. Now, people are going to talk about Israel. We've been a very good friend to Israel, and Israel wouldn't be there but for the U.S. I'm not going to say necessarily I think Israel's going to support the U.S. if we need them. I think they're more dependent on us than we are on them.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, who do you consider our worst adversaries?
Well, the first one that comes to mind is Iran. I think we all can agree they hate us. They continue to burn our flag. They do not have one great thing to say about us. And we've just turned over billions and billions of dollars to them. And our own leader, John Kerry, has even made the comment that the money that they received, all they're going to do is spend that on other organizations that hate us, Islamic terrorists, and they're going to be taking the money that we've provided to Iran and they're going to be using it against us. Without a doubt, I think Iran is one of our worst enemies. Thank you.
Mr. Vogt. Delegate vote, sorry. Social media is being blamed for recruitment of Americans to join ISIS. How would you prevent this problem, or at least start correcting it?
One of the first areas that we can address that problem is we hear a lot of folks debate and question the freedom of privacy and whether we should be protecting data domestically. And I don't know many people that disagree that our privacy here is one of the ultimate rights that we have in the Constitution. But outside of the borders of this country, I don't care about their privacy. We have the ability and the intelligence to be able to watch what's going on outside of our borders and to use that to make sure that they don't come into our country and incite terror or to recruit our men and women, especially those younger that seem to be more amiable, and prevent that type of erosion, creating events like San Bernardino or Paris or most recently Brussels, where I have a Marine family I'm close to that were just there. Thank God they're safe. And we do that, and we can even use it conversely and use our abilities in social media to promote a better America on these fronts, to stop our biggest enemies, Congressman John Delaney and President Barack Obama, from allowing this country to continue to disintegrate and re-stabilizing national security.
Thank you, David. Mr. Chen. We're not doing it in alphabetical order. We bounce back and forth. How many of the candidates, and I am going to let him answer, and then you all can answer this, everyone can answer this question. How many of you use a form of social media? Facebook, Twitter, or is there another form that you use?
I use Facebook and Twitter.
You use both of them?
Yeah.
Chris?
I use Facebook and Twitter.
Ami?
I don't have a mic, I'm sure you can hear me. I have a web page, I have a Facebook page, and actually my son operates my Twitter account for me because frankly, I don't quite understand how it works.
Jerry?
For myself, I do have a Facebook page and also have a Terry Baker for Congress website. I also do a little bit of email, but the most effective way for me to communicate with the people of Washington County, and I think I've done a great job being successful with the voters, is I go out and I talk to the people one-on-one or in small groups, big groups, it doesn't matter. But I learn so much when I'm out in the community. If I'm at the hardware store talking to the old guys sitting in there drinking their coffee, talking about what was in the paper that day, I get a lot of valuable time just listening to people and valuing and incorporating their input into my decision when I have to make a major decision in Washington County. But FaceTime, one-on-one with people, I find that's the most, that's what works for me. Thank you.
Mr. Painter?
I ain't gonna lie, what was the question? I forgot.
Many of you candidates use social media.
Oh, okay.
In fact, almost everyone does today. Do you use Twitter, Facebook, or do you have another means?
I'm a low-tech redneck. I do have a website for painterforcongress.com. Please check it out. That's the extent of my technology.
Okay. David?
Well, my preferred method of speaking to folks is one-on-one, and in fact, I put my cell phone number on my business card and give it to every single person I ever meet. So if you want it, it's on the back table. You can call me any day, any time. But we also have to continue to grow and learn with the changing world around us if we're going to continue to fight against what we've lost a lot of the control of the liberal media, because one of the things President Obama did was he took control of digital media and the social outlooks. So we've got to be able to fight back on that front. So for that reason, I have Vote for Congress website, I have Facebook, I have Twitter, I have Instagram, I have Snapchat. All of these areas, we've got to use every absolute tool we possibly can. And if we're not learning them, we're giving the Democrats too many chances to erode the future of our generations.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Ruth, I will try to answer the question since it was a pretty straightforward, direct question. I have a personal Facebook page, which I do very little with. I have a campaign Facebook page, which I do a lot with. I have a Twitter feed, which I'm still trying to understand, and my team helps me to work it. And I'm the first one, I think, to have mentioned LinkedIn. I told you in my introductory comments, I'm a businessman. LinkedIn is known as the Facebook for business, and I use that quite a bit, and you might be surprised how many other people do use it, people who aren't even on Facebook and Twitter. So those are my platforms that I engage in social media.
Thank you. I also have that LinkedIn, and it's very educational. Mr. Ficker?
Thank you for asking the candidates this question in inverse to their standing in the polls, because I have been leading in every red Maryland poll in this race, and I urge you to vote for the Trump, Cruz, Ficker ticket. A number of these candidates are running away from Mr. Trump and Mr. Cruz. I'm standing with them, and we're going to win. I'm on Facebook every day. I'm a major stockholder in Facebook. I bought the stock at 24. It's now like 116. It's a good investment. I'm going to go and see Mark Zuckerberg personally, and I'm going to ask him to locate some of his jobs in Western Maryland. I'm going to go and see Tim Cook of Apple, another stock I own, and I'm going to ask him to bring some of those 500,000 jobs that he has in China to Western Maryland. He only has 50,000 in the United States. I'm also on Twitter. If you want to keep up with this campaign, go on Facebook. I'm sure you've seen my ads. It's a delightful way to communicate. It's instantaneous. And I can tell you this, you're all my friends, because I have never met a Western Marylander that I didn't like.
Well, I hope that's true, because I'm going to advise you that the rules in front of you say to remain seated. If you want the next question, are you going to remain seated?
Well, let me just say this about
No, I'm not giving you your question.
Let me just say this about that. You cannot speak on the floor of the House of Representatives without standing. You cannot address the judges in Garrett County without standing. The presidential candidates stand, and I believe that the people of Garrett County need someone to stand up for them in Congress.
Please sit down.
Can I make a comment on Mr. Ficker's, earlier he said that the candidates are steering and running away from Trump, Cruz, Kasich. That is totally untrue. The most frequent question I receive when I'm talking to people, who are you supporting for president? So I do have to disagree with him on that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Mr. Frank, recently we had 5 prisoners released from Iran. In your opinion, why was their release not negotiated with the Iran agreement?
Wow, I've only got 90 seconds to answer that, Ruth. I wish I had an hour. The Iran agreement is one of the things that I think is something that's such an outrage that there's not enough time to talk about all the things that went wrong with it. It's possibly the worst international agreement this country has ever entered into, and that's saying a lot. It is abysmal. It is a disaster. And I can't wait for it to be overturned, hopefully by the next president, which I hope and pray is a Republican, as well as the backing of Congress. Regarding the prisoners, I think it is indeed, Ruth, unconscionable that the president instructed Secretary Kerry to not even mention it. Why? We don't want to offend the Iranians. These are people that hate us, call us the great Satan, and have said they are going to wipe Israel off the face of the planet. They're developing ICBMs which have one purpose, and that is to deliver nuclear weapons. And this is a regime that we don't want to offend. They're the #1 world state sponsor of terrorism. And I think that leaving the 5 hostages out of the negotiations was an egregious thing that the administration did. And I regret it on behalf of all Americans. But what they did is what they did. And I would say finally that there were other things that were left out as well. And there were some things that were thrown in, such as the lifting of restrictions on Iran's ICBM technology. That was an outrage as well. The Iranians didn't even originally ask for it, and we just threw it in there for some reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hooper, following up on what Mr. Howard has said, summarize briefly the Iran deal to the best of your knowledge. You may use sanctions, oil, money, or any phase of that you are comfortable with as long as you stay within your time.
I have 2 papers on the Iran agreement and my problems with it on my website, and that's amiforcongress.com. In the first place, it was negotiated, and in the case of the 5 hostages, it was negotiated because the United States and the Obama administration felt that an agreement was more important than what the agreement contained. This is a real problem. It has happened before in the United States negotiations of treaties. We should not put the objective of getting a treaty ahead of what it contains. The only treaty that has actually been in the United States' interest in all these years of treaties has been the Non-Proliferation Treaty, and I can get into that later if anyone wants. But the Iran treaty had several problems. It was not verifiable. It was not in our interest even if it were verifiable, and it allows Iran to continue its technology development of both missiles and, for that matter, nuclear weapons. They are threatening both us and Israel with the things that they are doing. They have already actually violated the United Nations sanctions on their testing of missiles at least twice in the last month. We have done nothing about that. And we don't even know what the verification regime will be. Essentially, what the Congress was asked to do was to agree to an agreement that they couldn't read because the IAEA would not release it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ficker, can you remain seated?
Yes.
Do you feel that it was right for our military to apologize to Iran for our military going out of waters into territory by mistake? Was our military humiliated in your opinion?
Ma'am, I'm terribly sorry. I didn't catch one of the phrases that you said at the beginning. Could you repeat that question, please?
Do you feel it was right for our military to apologize to Iran for our military going out of our waters by mistake?
You're talking about the captured Navy men. I would not have apologized. I think that, and I'm very strong military, by the way. You know, if you're not strong military, you don't go to West Point as I did. You don't get an honorable discharge as I did. You don't choose a father-in-law that was a 3-star general and in charge of logistics for the Vietnam War. I believe in speaking softly, but carrying a very big stick. I've seen the horrors of war. I had 25 funerals before I was 25 years old. I know you have to be strong. I don't want to shed American blood, but I don't think we have anything to apologize to Iran for, except, as Donald Trump would say, for making a very bad deal from the United States standpoint. Instead of giving them $150 billion, they should have given it to us. We should have had our hostages released instead of having them in these little hellholes where the ceiling of the cell is like 40 inches high. We should have demanded those hostages been released, and then I would have sent in the SEALs to get them if necessary. I'm not going to apologize for going a little bit into the Iran waters for what they've been doing. They owe us an apology.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, if you were elected to Congress, what would be your criteria for preventing another terrorist attack?
If I'm fortunate enough to earn the seat to Congress, one of my top priorities are going to be to protect the American people, in particular the ones in the 6th District. One of the major tools that we can provide to our people trying to protect us would be our local law enforcement people. They are the ones that know our communities well. They know how to protect us. They just need the resources, and they need government to get out of their way so that they can come in and protect us. But just providing necessary tools to our local law enforcement, as well as, and also we have to secure our borders. We have to stop anything else, if at all possible, from being able to come into our country and attack us. I know back during the Boston Marathon a couple of years ago, when the Syrians had the bombings there at the end of the marathon, that was really, really upsetting to me, because I am a former distance runner, and I've run many Boston marathons, and I was a pretty lucky guy. I finished 7th in the Boston Marathon in 1982, and the way that they were, the Syrian people were able to get up there and let their baggage so that they could hurt the participants and the spectators was just uncalled for. So we really need to take care of our local law enforcement and let them do their job so that they can protect us. Thank you.
Mr. Chen, how do you feel about North Korea's recent satellite launch? And what should the United States, how should we be responding?
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, North Korea, yeah, I read the news about that. North Korea, I will say American have to try everything in our power, stop it, and then do not allow them to attack the other country. Is my answer.
Thank you.
Can I add something?
You may. Be short.
I'll be very short. One of the things that we need to worry about from North Korea is what happened last weekend. Not only have they launched this satellite that went, by the way, it went actually over the Super Bowl while the Super Bowl was being played, but they showed a video last weekend of a potential nuclear attack on Washington, D.C. That was a clear and evident threat. We need to worry about North Korea in a very serious way.
Thank you.
Could I say something about that too?
Briefly, yes.
Rather than just looking at last week, I think we need to look at how North Korea treats its own people. You have millions of people literally starving, hundreds of thousands in concentration camps. If they're treating their own people that way, how are they going to treat anyone else? So, I went to the Olympics in Seoul in 1988 and had a bird's eye view of what was happening there. We have to be very careful about their nuclear armament, and that's why I really would like to remain on good terms with China, at least in one respect, namely that they have a tremendous amount of control over those people that got us in a world war where tens of thousands of Americans died.
Thank you. Mr. Painter, should the United States continue to be wary of President Putin, and why?
There's no doubt we should continue to be very wary of Putin. He's just another in a long tradition of the strong man in Russia. I don't care if you look at Stalin, Ivan the Terrible, or anybody in between. He is cut out of the same bowl of cloth, and I wouldn't trust that snake. I wouldn't turn my back on him for a minute. If he thinks he can annex part of Europe, he'll annex part of Europe. If he thinks he can annex down into the Mideast, he'll annex what he can in the Mideast. He's another Russian strongman, just looking to pull anybody he can, just like Stalin. We gotta watch that guy.
Thank you. My last question, Mr. Vogt, Delegate Vogt. If elected and we elect a Republican president, which candidate would you prefer to serve under?
I would support any candidate from the Republican nomination. However, of the three we have right now, I would tend to hope that we can put a ticket for Cruz and Trump together.
Thank you. I will be back. Mr. Tom Sheehan is going to discuss economic issues at this time.